A slacker and his friends try to survive a zombie apocalypse. Listen as we share our thoughts on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, the proper pronunciation of doppelgänger, and the opposite of Guardians of the Galaxy. Meet us at the Winchester as we find out if Shaun of the Dead stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with the glutton. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Alan Noah, and joining me, as always, is the Ed to my Shaun, James Brief.
Aw, I guess I'm the lovable character, and you're the stern, kind of angry one at times. Rah, 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 do as I say. And I'm just like, hey, man, let's just have some fun. So I will take it, Al. I guess that also means that I become a zombie by the end of this podcast.
Yes to all of that. You're the guy who's on the couch playing video games. I mean, that's on brand and not an insult.
And I don't mean this in front of actor Nick Frost, but are you calling me a little chubby?
Anyway, it's great to see you again. No, I'm just teasing. So it's October, and I think we did this last year, maybe the year before. I don't even really remember, but I figured, hey, let's just do scary movies throughout October. Scary in quotation marks, because Shaun of the Dead is not particularly scary, but it's appropriate to talk about because the movie just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and you know me, I'm a sucker for anniversaries, and I was like, yes, Shaun of the Dead, that's perfect. I remember seeing this movie, finding it really, really funny, but I haven't revisited it. I think this was my second time watching it, maybe third. But just to give our listeners a little preview of what's to come, next week we're going to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one from 50 years ago. That's another anniversary. Then we're going to talk about The Cell and Wishmaster. That will round out our spooky season here at the Test of Time. But I did also just want to mention that I did recently see another movie that's quote-unquote scary, not really. I saw Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Have you seen that, James?
No, I have not seen it yet.
Okay, well, I'll give you a spoiler-free review. I know you hate spoilers. I enjoyed it. It was a fun time at the movie theater. I honestly can't remember the last time I saw a Tim Burton movie that I was like, yeah, that's amazing. His last few movies I haven't really been that into, but this was a return to form. It definitely felt like the first Beetlejuice movie, just in terms of structure and how it's shot and like the style and the tone. The feeling of it was completely 100% spot on. It's got a great cast, you know, the returning cast members. There's some new cast members as well. Some work better than others in terms of the new cast. I think a couple characters are just kind of there because Tim Burton liked the actors, and the actors do a great job, but the characters don't really add a ton. Is it as good as the first Beetlejuice? No. But is it a damn fine movie? Yeah, I would definitely say so. And if you like the first one, I can't see any reason why you would not like the second.
The fact that it made $110 million in its opening weekend reminds me of one obvious comparison, and that's Top Gun Maverick. And that's another film that, you know, pretty much the same time as Beetlejuice and comes out, post-pandemic. And it's to raving critical response, but also raving box office response and success. And, you know, people seem to really respond to nostalgia if it's good. It turns out with a lot of the movies you try to reboot sometimes they're kind of insulting, and they will take actors and actresses that maybe are 20 years older, and you don't really acknowledge that, or you make it all about these characters now having hip problems, and that's not an interesting thing about the characters we loved. And people seem to really have enjoyed making this film. I think it's wrong when people say Hollywood's all out of ideas when they just keep remaking stuff. Not remakes, but the really rebooting. What really works and what is just nostalgia? And I think it probably in the end, like I usually say, it comes down to the quality. And in the end, if you were entertained, people are going to go to it. If the critics were like, this is a piece of garbage, they're not going to, just because it's Tim Burton and you slap the name Beetlejuice on it.
I have found that with the legacy sequels or Lego sequels that I've seen, I am meh on, I think, virtually all of them, with the only exception that pops to mind being Rocky Balboa. And that was a while ago. That was, 2006, 7, something like that. Of the ones that have hit in the past 5 to 10 years, I don't really think any of them have been amazing. And I don't even know that I would say Beetlejuice was amazing, but it was very good. But let's talk about Shaun of the Dead. James, do you want to give our listeners a recap of what this movie is all about?
Sure. This movie is about the eponymous Shaun, who's an aimless slacker who can't get his life together. All he wants to do is drink at his favorite pub, the Winchester, with his best friend Ed. This annoys his girlfriend Liz, who dumps Shaun. After a night of drinking, Shaun awakes to find that his neighborhood is overrun with the undead. Shaun makes a plan to rescue Liz and her roommates, his mom, his stepdad, and bring them all to the Winchester where they can wait for this whole thing to blow over. It's not a great plan, and members of Shaun's party keep dying, including his stepdad and mother. Zombies eventually overrun the Winchester, but Shaun and Liz manage to escape with the help of the British Army.
Right. And so when this movie came out 20 years ago, I don't believe it was a smash hit. If I'm remembering right, it kind of became a bigger hit like over time on DVD. Is that right?
Actually, it did pretty well. This was a film that it opened in Iceland, interestingly, on July 30th, 2004, and the USA on September 24th, 2004. It had a $6 million budget, and it opened at number 8 with $3.2 million. Number 1 is a film called The Forgotten, and it made $21 million. And I just find it so ironic. To me, it's completely forgotten. Have you ever heard of this film?
I don't remember it. Ha 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 ha.
There was another film called First Daughter. I remember that film. That was Katie Holmes, and that opened at number 5. So that beat Shaun of the Dead's number 8. However, it wound up being $14 million domestically on a $6 million budget and $25 million worldwide. It launched the careers of not only Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, but director Edgar Wright.
And he's gone on to do Scott Pilgrim versus the World and Baby Driver. He wrote Ant-Man and was going to direct it and then didn't. And also Shaun of the Dead is the first in the Cornetto trilogy, movies that he worked on with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. The second one being Hot Fuzz and the third being The World's End. But James, had you seen Shaun of the Dead before?
I did, and I remember the buzz of this film being very positive, and there's a decent chance I saw this in the movie theater, and I loved it the first time I saw it. But you, I've really not seen it for many years.
Okay, but I am just into the movie right as it starts. That opening scene in the Winchester is so brilliantly shot, where it's Shaun having a fight with his girlfriend and she's complaining about his friend Ed that's always there. Oh, but no offense to you, Ed. And then the camera swings over and you see that Ed is standing right there. And then she says, well, you always bring Ed around, so I have to bring my flatmates around and you don't really like them. And then he says, yeah, but I don't mind you guys. And then the camera reveals that they're there also. And it's a small little thing, but right out of the gate, Edgar Wright is having fun with what he's doing. The movie making is smart. The way the camera's moving, the way these things are revealed, it's brilliant. And I'm interested and I'm laughing already. And the way that the movie also plays with your expectations is really smart, because then you see these feet shuffling around and it looks like it's a zombie, but it's not. It's just Shaun like getting up out of bed. It's playing with the fact that you, the person watching the movie, know that it's a zombie movie, so you're expecting zombie stuff, and no, that's going to happen later. I really feel like this is a movie that is so brilliantly directed and shot and also written. I found myself to just be like really hooked right out of the gate. Did you have that reaction too?
Yeah, very quickly, I'm impressed by this film because sometimes there's just chemistry that you could just see from two people, and Nick Frost and Simon Pegg have that chemistry. There's just something that you could tell that there's just a lot of camaraderie here, and I instantly like that chemistry.
Yeah.
Nick Frost is incredibly charming. Simon Pegg is a great everyman. I think he's evolved, in my opinion, to a lot more than an everyman. I was into it very quickly. But speaking of quickly, zombies do not come until quite a bit into this film.
Or do they? I mean, like, you're right that the real, actual zombies don't show up for a bit. But in the beginning, everyone is a zombie. The people on the bus are zombies. Shaun is a zombie as he's walking through his existence. He is a metaphorical zombie. Everyone that he passes by on the street is a zombie. The people on the bus are zombies. The people at the TV store that he works, they're zombies. So before you get to the zombies, there are zombies. And it's maybe not super subtle. I mean, I watched this movie with Courtney and my 11-year-old daughter, and she picked up on that right away. I'm like, oh, look, they all look like zombies. Which is fine. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. You know, one, she's very astute. But two, it's meant to do that. It's meant to evoke that feeling of we all get into our routines and we can kind of just sleepwalk through life. And no one is sleepwalking through life more than Shaun, who cannot get his shit together. He's fucking up his relationship with his girlfriend. He can't even remember to make reservations for their anniversary. He can't remember to bring flowers to his mom. His stepdad has to remind him. He is a zombie and he is fucking up his entire life. And then there's a zombie apocalypse, and he doesn't even fucking notice. There's a oneer of him walking to the convenience store before the zombie apocalypse. Then there's that same oneer where it's, you know, a long take of him going to the convenience store, except now there are zombies and everyone is dead, and he doesn't even fucking notice. That shot is brilliant. It is really fucking funny, and it tells you so much about the character.
Without a lot of exposition, you get a really good idea of where this guy is and who his friends are, where his priorities are, where his lack of motivation is, where kind of you almost see his potential, that he's a slacker, but he's not a loser.
Well, when Shaun and Ed first encounter the zombies, they don't know what's happening. They're very slow on the uptake. But when they do start fighting back, they start throwing their vinyl records. I love this scene. I thought that was so damn funny. It starts with Prince jokes where he says that he won't throw Purple Rain or Sign of the Times, but when they get to the Batman soundtrack, yeah, you can throw that. And that it's all right to throw the Dire Straits album and Sade. And apparently in real life, they had to get approval to show these album covers, to say these musicians' names. And it's a little bit of an insult, I guess, for Sade to say, oh yeah, you can chuck the record at a zombie. But she was very cool about it. She had a sense of humor about it. And then Edgar Wright did put a Sade song in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And he said something like, I kind of owed her.
One thing I loved about that vinyl scene is just the overall ridiculousness of this, because there are two kinds of zombies in all kinds of film and zombie lore. There's fast zombies and slow zombies. And in this film, they are especially slow and especially kind of weak zombies. And this guy that's attacking him, that they fling the vinyl records like frisbees at him, he's several yards away, several meters away. They can run away from him so easily.
Yeah.
But they're just sitting there. They're discussing the records. They even go and get the records. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, it's a farce because, of course, if you saw an undead, you're going to be terrified. You're going to be running away. And they're like, oh, yeah, look at this. Let's throw records at him and try to chop his head off.
Right, because there is very little exposition in this movie about what caused people to turn into zombies and what to do. But the one thing that they do get from the news report is that to stop a zombie, behead them or destroy the brain, which is all the exposition that they need. Also, about the news reports, it happens in the beginning and then later at the end of the movie when Shaun is just flipping through the channels and he doesn't care and he's not paying attention. But it all forms one full sentence if you pay attention. Like, the person on the first channel, he cuts off and then he flips it. And then that next person talking kind of completes the sentence. So it does all flow together, you know? So even though he's not staying on one channel, he still could get the story if only he was listening, which he isn't. And you mentioned slow zombies versus fast zombies. Forever before this movie, there were only slow zombies. Fast zombies became a thing with 28 Days Later, which was only a couple years before this movie. I think that was 2002. But like, that idea was fairly new, and Shaun of the Dead was in development way before 28 Days Later. And then after that movie came out and did pretty well, there was some conversation of, oh, should we make the zombies in Shaun of the Dead fast zombies? And Simon Pegg, I think, had some line that, like, death isn't an energy drink, but also it wouldn't fit with this type of movie. It wouldn't fit with their low budget and what they were going for. This movie had to have slow zombies.
Did you pick up on the 28 Days Later reference in this film?
Yes, at the very end, there's a throwaway line in that newscast scene that the zombie apocalypse was not caused by rabid monkeys, which is what happens in 28 Days Later.
Right. And Shaun, the first morning of the real zombie outbreak, he's yawning and kind of like slouching his way over to the convenience store. So he inadvertently, without even trying, is doing what you later find in this zombie universe is successful. If you mimic zombie movements, they won't attack you. So just being a regular guy in the morning, he literally looks like a zombie to a zombie. So I love the style of comedy there.
Yeah, and let's talk about the writing of this movie, because the script for this movie is fucking brilliant. It is next level. I was just blown away by all of the foreshadowing, all of the callbacks. There are so many. Like, every line of dialogue is very meticulously written. I think this was the first movie that they wrote. They'd worked on the TV show Spaced together before, which I haven't seen.
That got them some of the buzz to make this film, apparently.
Yes. Like, some of them are more obvious, like when he's at work in the beginning of the movie and his pen is leaking and someone says, "You've got red on you." Okay, you can kind of expect that that's going to come back again as blood. When Ed is playing the video game, I think it's Resident Evil, I'm not sure, but he's saying, "Okay, reload, I'm on it." That exact dialogue happens again later when they're in the Winchester, and it's just reversed. Then Ed is telling Shaun, "Reload, I'm on it." Shaun bumps into his ex-girlfriend Yvonne 3 times in the movie. And every time they have the same dialogue as they bump into each other, Yvonne says, "How you doing?" And Shaun says, "Surviving." And when he says surviving the first time, he just kind of means, you know, getting through life because everything is normal. The second time, it's like, well, we're surviving the zombie apocalypse. And the third time, it means that they are literally the only people who have survived, him and his girlfriend Liz, and everyone else is dead. Also, when Ed is fighting with Shaun's roommate, Pete, he says, "If you can't get your act together, if you're going to be a slob and an animal, you can live in a shed." Where does Ed end up in the movie? in the shed at the end. He's the zombie tied up in the shed. And then what does Ed say about Pete in that scene? He says, next time I see him, he's dead. The next time you see Pete, he is in fact dead. There are so many lines like that. I feel like this is a next level brilliant script. But going back to Yvonne, his ex-girlfriend, she's basically the hero of the movie. She saves Shaun and Liz. And at the end, when the army shows up, you could say, well, that's out of nowhere. But it's not, because he tells her in the middle of the movie when they bump into each other, we're going to the Winchester. And she looks at him like, you're going to the pub? She knows it's a bad idea, but then she goes off and has her own adventure, finds the army and says, I know that my friends are at the Winchester. And so, it makes logical sense. It's not out of nowhere that she shows up with the army. Again, just, brilliant writing.
There's a great sight gag that as the two groups pass each other, they see their doppelgangers, or their counterparts in the other group. And it was a very good laugh.
I'm going to be nice and not make fun of you for saying doppelgangers when it's doppelgangers.
But you just did.
Yeah, but I'm letting it go. One of the doppelgangers is Martin Freeman. He is a famous British actor. He was in the Hobbit movies. Also, he was in The Office, and so was Lucy Davis. She plays Diane in this movie, but they were the couple, Tim and Dawn, in the British Office. So they have like this one little reunion for a second. A lot of the people who are in Shaun of the Dead are famous British actors. Some, like Martin Freeman and, people from The Office, we recognize. Some of them as Americans, we don't. But, apparently like the woman who plays Shaun's mom is a famous British actress. I didn't recognize her. The stepdad, played by Bill Nye, I know him from Love Actually, and he is amazing in that movie. But he really has some heart. I think he's the first character in the movie who makes it not purely a comedy. I mean, like, it is a comedy when Shaun is talking about, we get to kill Philip. Yay, that'll be fun, killing Philip. And then as Philip is dying, he says, being a dad is hard. I tried my best to fill that role for you as your stepdad because I knew that you needed it, and I love you. And then he dies, and it's like, oh, shit, yeah, this is a silly movie, but yeah, that was actually a bit heart-wrenching. And then, when his mom gets bit and then dies and then has to be shot, it's surprisingly emotional. And Simon Pegg apparently was actually really crying when they filmed that scene and, got emotional there. And like, I feel like that's the kind of thing you can lose in a zombie movie when, okay, they're zombies, we have to blast them and cut off their heads or whatever to survive. But also, these are people, right? And, like they just died. And even if you don't know the person, that's somebody else's mom or dad or brother or whoever. And I like the way that the movie brings in a little bit of real emotion, even though it is a comedy.
That's what you get when you cast Bill Nye and Penelope Wilton in these roles. Bill Nye is fantastic. And Penelope, she's been in films like The Best Exotic, Marigold Hotel, Pride and Prejudice. But it seems to be a cliche, and I would believe this is true, that the most desirable thing as an actor is a death scene, the outpouring of all emotion the last emotions a human can do. And Bill Nye just does a brilliant death scene. And to be fair, so does Penelope Wilton. The way she's covering up her mortal wound from her son. I didn't want you to worry.
Yeah.
And it's not a bite. It's not one of those things where, oh, okay, she's going to pick it up and she didn't realize that bite was bad. No, she is missing part of her forearm. It's like, wow. I think the acting in this film, it's great.
It is. I didn't remember a ton of this movie from the last time I saw it, but one thing that I did remember was the scene where they are beating up the zombie to Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. And I remember thinking that it was very funny, but watching it again, I thought it was just hilarious because not only are they beating this zombie to the beat of the song,
Oh, God, I love that.
it's so great. But at this point, they know that the only way to kill a zombie is by going for the head, and they're just whacking this zombie with pool cues in the torso. They're not really doing much. Like, this is just kind of annoying the zombie and maybe slowing it down slightly, but definitely not going to kill it. And the zombie it's this older gentleman. He's overweight. He's not threatening at all. It's sort of like the opposite of Guardians of the Galaxy, where there's like these amazing fight sequences with these great classic rock songs, and you're into the scene because you love the song, and you're also into the fight because it's, this cool CGI slugfest. This is just hitting an old dude with sticks, but to a great song. I love it. It is so, so damn funny. And then Edgar Wright would do something similar in Baby Driver, where a lot of the action sequences were synchronized with the music.
I do love another part of this film. There's this line that they keep saying, we'll go to the Winchester and wait for this whole thing to just blow over. It's funny because it's a zombie apocalypse. And it's like, these things don't just blow over, like, in a day. This might be like COVID. This might take like 18 months or something. Even later when David, he's like, we were safe in the flat. Like, it wouldn't have worked. 6 people in that flat. You're going to go through the couple boxes of pasta that you have pretty quickly,
I mean, yes, you're right. But Shaun is right. This whole thing does blow over. And I cannot think of another zombie movie or TV show where the ending is, yup, and everything went back to normal. That's not how these things go. Normally, is there one where that happens?
A little bit. I Am Legend, like at least the theatrical release, is basically like, we have cured the zombies and it's all done. It implies that, at least. Although they're going to make a sequel, so I guess maybe they didn't. You're right. That's a fantastic thing that really the whole thing does blow over. So maybe you're right. I actually have to take that back. Had they waited in the flat, the whole thing would have blown over. So David actually is right.
And Shaun is too. Shaun is right that it will blow over. And it's just a very unconventional thing to see in a zombie movie, but it works for the comedy because then they get to show what happens with the zombies, and they're just used for menial jobs and reality shows, which feels fairly realistic, quite frankly. And, then as they're flipping through the channels and you kind of want to know, well, what happened and how did they cure it and what, they just don't answer. You don't get an answer. It doesn't matter. It is deliberate. That's not the point.
I love that. And when they say things like, well, we now know that it's been caused by the click. And it's telling you this is not that kind of film.
Right. This is kind of a random question, but I wanted to ask you something, James. How would you describe this movie? Would you call it... Well, you know what? I don't want to ask you a leading question. What 1 to 2 words would you use to describe it?
I have to say that the film, while it does have comedic tones, and I would still label it a comedy, it's a lot more of it's a film than it is like a satirical spoof that you would think a movie like Shaun of the Dead, named after one of the classic zombie films of all time, would be.
Okay, so that was way more than 1 or 2 words, but that's okay.
It is hard to label it. How would you say it? I mean, I know how the marketing campaign had said it. Do you remember what they called this film?
Did they call it a zom rom-com?
That's exactly what they called it, and that's very clever and very funny.
It is clever, but I don't think this movie is a rom-com. If there's a relationship in this movie that holds the whole thing together, it's not Shaun and Liz. It's Shaun and Ed.
That's true, but Shaun and Liz get back together at the end.
Shaun and Ed reconcile at the end. I mean,
Absolutely.
it kind of helps that Ed's a zombie, but still. And yeah, I mean, the movie does kind of revolve around the love story, so I guess that's fine. But there was one word in there that you used that I picked up on. You called the movie a spoof.
I said it was not a spoof.
Right. But in doing research today, I saw that a lot of people call this movie a parody. And I don't think this movie is a parody. I think this
I agree
movie
with
is
that.
an homage.
Correct.
And you can nitpick the semantics, but like a parody, I feel like is more you're laughing at the thing that you're making fun of, whereas an homage is you're respecting it. And because this movie is a comedy, you're laughing with it. You are laughing with zombie movies. And that is clearly what Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright were going for. They clearly love zombie movies. And this movie is a comedic version of it, but it's not mocking zombie movies. It really is a love letter to zombie movies. And it is, in and of itself, a good zombie movie that just happens to be funny. But James, what do you think about the movie as a whole? Do you think that Shaun of the Dead stands the test of time?
I'm going to say it this way, Al. This film is an indie film. And in my opinion, this is a fantastic example of what an indie film can be. It's funny. I think this is just a good film because of really what you picked up on about all the nitty, like little foreshadowings and the callbacks. And it's just a smart film. And it's not the kind of film you would expect to be smart. I just don't walk into a movie called Shaun of the Dead, and I think that that's going to be, a very slick and witty, intelligent film. And I think the more I watch this film in the future, I'm going to pick up more stuff. Like I'm going to pick up more of these little foreshadowing things that they say early on. I think the film is very good. I think the film is a good zombie film. Wow, actually, memory unlocked. I remember the theater laughing at the joke where Bill Nye's character Philip turns off the tape deck and turns off the rock music. So I remember the whole theater laughing at that joke. So yes, I did see this movie in the theater. This film has some real George Romero gore in this film that you may not be prepared for.
Only one scene.
No, I'd say there's two scenes. On their way to the Winchester, they look through the fence and they see a bunch of zombies just like ripping out the entrails of some guy and disemboweling him and eating him. And we see later David's death is horribly graphic.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, if you don't like gore, you're really going to have to turn away when David dies. So that is a warning of this film, and it does toe that line. I don't think it necessarily needed that gore. It could have done it with a lot of blood splashing, I think. But for me, it's fine because I have no problem with it. I was just surprised that they go there with that. So just a little word of warning to people if you haven't seen this film. But to me, it's just a fantastic film. It's really well done. It's witty, and I love this film. So Shaun of the Dead stands the test of time. What do you think, Al?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. It 1,000% does. It is brilliant. It is a fantastic script. The direction, the camera work, the acting, the dialogue, the foreshadowing, the callbacks, all of it. It is brilliant on every level. This movie is a classic. I really think this is a masterpiece. This is a brilliant movie. I haven't watched the TV show Spaced, but after watching this movie, I'm like, okay, it's on my list. I really want to go and watch that. Also, it's like a British show, so it's, I think, 14 episodes total, so that'll be an easy one to binge. I'm looking forward to doing more of these movies on the podcast. Hot Fuzz we can do, because that came out in 2007. The World's End was 2013, so we have a few years to wait for that. But one thing kind of struck me as I was watching it. It does have something in common with the other movie we talked about recently, also from 2004. And maybe it's weird to compare them, but both Shaun of the Dead and Garden State are about growing up. They tackle that topic in very, very different ways and completely different tones and styles and formats and everything. But really, at the end of the day, that's what Shaun of the Dead is about. This is a guy having a quarter-life crisis, and he can't make any decisions, and he is forced to grow up and take responsibility so many of the decisions that he makes in this movie are fucking stupid and dead wrong and literally cost people their lives, but he is taking charge. That's all Liz wants him to do. That's all his mom and stepdad want him to do, is to take initiative and show an interest and not be a zombie and not sleepwalk through life. And here in this zombie apocalypse, he finally does that. He grows a little, at the end of the movie. He's back in the same apartment. It's cleaner, it's nicer, but he's with Liz. He's still playing video games with Ed, presumably less often because Ed's a zombie. But even though I love all of the little things that the movie does, I also like what it does on a big macro level. Yeah, this is a phenomenal movie, and it absolutely stands the test of time. If I wanted to be a total asshole, I could say, well, they do have answering machines, and when he's looking for a restaurant, he flips through a phone book. Yeah, okay, sure. But, those are tiny, tiny details. One thing about the phone book, when he looks up the restaurant, it's called Fulci's, and that's named after Lucio Fulci, who was an Italian director of horror movies. There's a lot of gags and a lot of quick little jokes about horror and zombies and Romero and all of these icons of the genre. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to continue our Spooktober thing that we're doing, and we're going to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974. 50 years ago, that movie came out. I know there have been many, many others, sequels and remakes and reboots and things like that, but we're going to the original. Have you ever seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, James?
I can't remember if I've seen the original or the remake, but I've seen one of them.
Okay. I don't think I've ever seen any of them. So I'm looking forward to that movie. I'm hoping it's not too scary and disturbing. I'm guessing it'll be less funny than Shaun of the Dead. But until then, we want to hear your thoughts on Shaun of the Dead, on zombie movies, on Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and Edgar Wright, on the Coronado trilogy, all of these things. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.